Okay, so picking up right where we left off, what we're going to do now is we're going to decouple the movement of the puzzle piece from the mouse because we don't want it to be automatic. We want you to have to click and pick up the puzzle piece before the puzzle piece is moving synchronized with the mouse. So we have to do a few things. We're going to add a couple more statuses for the puzzle piece. And I want to point something out. This may or may not happen for you. When you change this value here, and you save it, for some reason, the object that it's attached to doesn't update. So you may find yourself changing a value and it not making a difference. You might actually have to manually change the starting value here. Okay. Now, since we're going to have more than just two statuses, we can't just say if P status is not equal to locked. We now have to say exactly what we want it to be equal to. So if it's equal to picked up, then go ahead and synchronize the movement. So that means we now have to set this. So to have it be picked up, we're going to add a section called on mouse down. So void on mouse down, and this is case sensitive because it's a predefined routine. And so what this says is if the mouse has been clicked, the left mouse button has been clicked on the object that the script is attached to, then do something. In this case, we're changing the value of P status to picked up, which means this will now work. Now, this also checks if you've clicked on the left mouse button. So technically, this could cause an issue. So there's a few things you could do. Maybe you could do a right mouse click to pick up. So let's do that. Let's go to placed piece, and we'll go from mouse 0 to mouse 1. Mouse 1 is the right mouse button. So now, since this inherently checks for left, there's really no great way of changing this. So the left mouse will pick it up, and now the right mouse will drop it, or at least check for placement. Now there is, I don't want to call it a glitch, but when you click the mouse, it checks for placement. Placement only gets reset to no if you've clicked on another object. So if a trigger is not occurring, this does not get reset yet. So in other words, I could say click down here, and then when I move it up here, it will automatically fall into place because this variable has not been reset. Having said that, once the game is done, it will be impossible to not have a trigger occur. Okay, so this should work now. So we left click to pick up, and then as we said, we now changed it so the right click is the placement. There we go. Fell right into place. Now we'll left click. We'll click over here because this is where the wrong one is. It goes transparent. And now we right click over here and it goes into place. Now I'll talk about the glitch that I just mentioned. So we run it one more time. We'll left click to pick it up. If I right click here, it doesn't go transparent because there is nothing, there's no trigger occurring because there's no sockets or anything down here. So what happens is when I move this up to the correct place, it will fall into place without me clicking. See how it's only jumped there and I didn't click? So that's what I was talking about, and that's because this variable is only getting reset when there's a collision. So down here, there's nothing to collide with. But like I said, we don't have to worry about addressing that yet, because what's going to happen is when we're done, there will always be some kind of trigger occurring. Okay, brief splice there while I check something. We're going to have to make a modification to this. So what happens is, even though you've placed a piece, a trigger is still occurring. So even though you've placed it, that trigger is still occurring again and again and again. So what you want to do is you want to do a little housekeeping in here as well. So I'm going to paste in these 2 lines. What this says is, so the other object that is being collided with, get component box collider, disable the box collider. Likewise, for the object that this script is attached to, get component box collider, disable the box collider. So you're disabling the box collider on both the puzzle piece and the socket. Because if you don't, unwanted things could occur because these triggers are still happening. And it's really good to understand that early in the game development process, because you may not realize it, but a collision is still happening even if you don't intend it to be happening. Some event may still be happening even if you don't intend it to be happening. So sometimes you have to take a few extra precautions to prevent those unintended events from occurring over and over again. Likewise in here, we need to set check placement to no. Okay, so now that we did that bit of housekeeping, we can start making more pieces and more sockets. So we already have socket A2, so let's make piece A2. And I'm just arranging them, I'm not making anything a parent or a child. Move that down. Click down here, take the second image, replace it. Copy that one. A3. Move that one down. And take the third image. And we'll make one more. Now another possibility, you might have collisions if you grab a piece and you move up. So we may have to put additional checks into place in case a collision there is occurring. And there's A4, and A4 will get the fourth image. And now we'll copy the sockets. And what we'll do is we'll line up a socket horizontally and line up a socket vertically, and then it's just a matter of copying and, or should I say replicating the 2 distances for all the remaining sockets. So I might do a splice when I'm doing that because that's just busy work. So left click to grab the first piece, right click to place it, left click to grab the second piece, right click to place it, so there's a fair amount of gap there. If you notice, I added a little code for the disabling, but I didn't add any additional code to match this piece to its socket or this piece to its socket, and yet it, see how the collision I mentioned there, and yet it is indeed working. And the reason for that is because we've got that one line that says if the collision is between 2 objects with the same name, in this case the puzzle piece and the socket, and if a mouse is clicked, then the collision should work. So as we can see, there's too much space there. So like I said, I'm going to line this up, so I'll probably do a splice. So it looks like the winning distance is 2.77. Now, based on the initial size of the object, you probably could make a much neater number, but again, once you've determined what the number is, it's just using the same distance between all the sockets. So that's the horizontal, we'll still have to do the vertical. So 2.77, so 2.54 positive would be for this one. And then for 5.31, I believe, if my math is correct. Here we go. So now it's just a matter of doing the second row. So let's take A4 and we'll rename this B1 because it's the second row. And we want it to be lined up the same as A1, so -3. And we need a puzzle piece for B1. And yes, I did skip the 5th column. We'll get to it in a few minutes. I just want to get the lining up correct. And this, we'll go back to our image. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is what B1 should look like. And so, alright, so that's lined up vertically. Now we just need to line it up horizontally. And I'll just do another split and come back. Okay, so it's looking like the winning distance vertically, so from A1 to B1, so it's a much cleaner number, so 1.7 to 3.5, so it's a 1.8 difference. And so you just use the horizontal and the vertical for the placement of the sockets, and that will about do it for this lesson. Can't really go much further without doing the inventory because as it is, it's getting crowded now. So we'll pick it up with the next lesson and we'll start adding the scrolling inventory.